Russell, welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Took a minute to get us here.
It did.
Yeah, man, this is great. So let's get into it. You have a very unique background in your path and journey as an artist, as a drummer, and all of those things. Has been a very interesting process for those that are sort of on the sideline and even those that are in the industry. So tell us a little bit about how you got started.
I grew up in Sioux City, Iowa. My father was a professional musician. He's a drummer, and his dad, my grandfather, was a trumpet player and played in the big bands and stuff like that. He started a jazz club in our hometown, which was, at the time, was the only jazz club. There were quite a few back in the 40s stuff. Anyway, I basically, my whole thing was as a result of those two men in my family. Both my brothers played instruments, drums. We're all drummers, and so listening to my dad, he was, I think being a teacher, it's like I find that young boys want to do what their dad does. They want to please their father. So I think that's where it came from, and just being around the instrument of drums is what I play, and was my start. And my grandfather bought me my first drum set, and I would play on the weekends sometimes with him and some of his buddies that would come in through Sioux City, and so that was my first start in playing with musicians that knew what they were doing and stuff like that. It gave me a sense of what being a professional and playing at a level is about, kind of thing. And that's where I started. My grandfather had his orchestra and gave me my first professional job when I was 12, subbing for my dad, who played in the band.
Okay. And by the way, what was the name of your dad's band then?
My dad played in my grandfather's band. My grandfather was Clarence Kenner.
Clarence Kennard?
Kenner.
Okay. And that was in
Sioux City, Iowa.
Sioux City, Iowa. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Back in the day.
Back in the day.
So there's a lot of, I guess, similar stories where someone very young started out and their family sort of had a band.
Yeah.
And you sort of got indoctrinated into it. So that's kind of the pathway, if you will, right?
And I'm sure a lot of professional musicians have similar stories. Someone in their family played. Someone in their family played professionally.
Yeah.
You kind of know the deal you're getting into. Because my dad didn't want me to be a professional musician. It's just it's too hard. Life's too hard. That kind of thing. But my grandfather always said, if you take care of the music will take care of you. And I remember that my whole life and sort of knew the deal. I knew the deal about carrying gear. It's like, well, you're going to be carrying gear and all that stuff, And
yeah, we know about that.
Being a drummer, and you got to haul some gear, and so I knew the deal, and I'd seen them working professionally and the things that would happen, and how they interacted with each other and stuff like that. So I kind of knew the deal that I was getting into. When I made a decision that's what I wanted to do.
Wonderful. Well, okay, so a lot of people are familiar with you, everywhere, but definitely sort of concentrated, maybe a little bit more in sort of a central sort of an area. But globally, you've worked with some top artists, José Feliciano for one. So tell us about that. How did that all get started, and how did you get the opportunities to do that, and what led to that?
I was just moved to Los Angeles. It was in the early '80s, and from Boulder, Colorado, and the percussionist that I worked with in Boulder, Colorado, was a percussionist with José Feliciano, and so when that chair opened up, he called me and said, "Hey, man, chair opened up, come and audition." So I did,
And where was Jose based at that time?
Was in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Actually, Villa Park in Orange County
Okay.
is where he lived.
Okay.
Auditioned at SIR in Hollywood there, and
Great studio.
Yeah, and I already knew all of his music because when I was a kid, I'd listen to Jose Feliciano records like over and over and over again.
You and
So I
me
knew
both,
all of
and a
his
lot of
stuff.
people like Light My Fire. Is that one of your favorites?
Yeah.
I love that song.
Norwegian Wood, which was one of my favorites by him, his version. I just thought he was really a soulful cat. And it was at a time in my life when my parents had gotten divorced. He was my solace, listening to his records. And so I knew his music, and when I auditioned for the band, I just knew what to do. And he hired me, and that was 8 years later,
Okay.
kind of thing. So.
Wow. Russell, who would you say some of your major influences would be? Now, I know that's a broad question. Let's start with the drums, and then maybe expound on just in general, but as a drummer, who are some of your major influences?
My first major
maybe your top 5. How's that?
Okay. My first major influence was because one of my cousins dated the drummer that played in the Temptations back in the 60s, I think.
Okay.
He might have been one of the original cat. I'm not sure. I forget his name. But that was my first major influence, and I was definitely into Motown, and Temptations was one of the bands that I was into. So that was the first. I liked the way he played. I liked his fills and all that stuff. So I paid attention to that. So basically, I would say it was R&B.
Okay, R&B.
Yeah.
So as a let's say as a technician, though, of the drummers that are drummers of drummers, who would you say your top 5 would be on that list?
Definitely number 1 would be Elvin Jones.
Right. Jazz Machine.
Yes. And that's why I moved to New York, because I wanted to study with Elvin Jones, but I never saw Elvin on the Jazzmobile going down the street.
Okay.
And never hooked up with him until Los Angeles. But I did hook up with Roy Haynes.
Nice. Very nice.
Just snap, crackle. And took lessons from him for a period of time. He taught at IS 201, which is up in Harlem there, and it was like a big band situation, and he taught ensemble.
Were you living in Harlem at the same time, or what part of the
Midtown?
Midtown. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. That's awesome. Well, let me
also I'll add to that.
Go ahead.
Billy Cobham was another major influence, because I had a chance to meet him. Actually, his Eddie, he was in a band called Dreams, and Eddie was the singer in that band, and I knew Eddie, and they had it was like a casual, like a private party. We call them casuals. They call them society gigs. It's casual private party in Long Island, and Billy couldn't make the gig. He asked me, "Hey, I've got this gig. You want to come down and play?" So gave me the address of a loft. It was down on the Lower East Side, and showed up, and nobody was there except for Billy, and he was playing, and my jaw dropped. I had never been up and close and personal to such technique and ferociousness.
Oh, absolutely. I had a chance to check him out at Catalina.
Yeah.
Maybe about 15 years ago, approximately. He doesn't come to the West Coast a lot, but that was great. So Billy, Elvin, Billy, who else would you say in that?
Jack DeJohnette is another drummer. And these are some of the older guys. And of course, I like Brian Blades.
Yeah.
I like what he does, his musicality. Peter Erskine is another one.
Yeah, definitely.
Those are a few. I have a bunch of.
Of course,
Vinny,
every drummer,
yeah.
every artist, whatever, they've got their top 5, 10, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are at the top. Great folks. Now, interesting you say Billy, because I personally at times will play a smaller let's say quote unquote bebop sort of a setup.
Mm-hmm.
One down, one up,
Yeah.
and then of course a smaller kick,
Yeah.
and just a few cymbals. But I also have a large double bass, setup as well. So interesting you say Billy, because I personally have never seen you or played with you when you have a larger setup like that. Is that
Yeah.
something you do, or just that's just an influence at that period?
I started out with playing a big set, and actually, my concert kit is a big set. It's not a double kick, but I use double pedals on it. It's like a 8-piece kit. I just for what I'm doing these days, unless it's in a concert gig, and I'm just doing local club gigs and stuff like that, I'll carry a smaller kit, kind
Okay,
of thing.
gotcha.
If I'm recording or something like that, I'll bring my concert kit.
Okay, of course that makes sense. Lighten the load, right?
Light and low.
What would you say, Russell, you are most known for? If someone is going to call you, what would you say is at the top of their mind as far as, why do they call? What are you most known for?
I pay attention to playing in the style of the music
Okay.
that I get called to play, and then concentrating on playing good time.
Okay.
Which is fundamental and basic, but it's the main thing, with drums and in the rhythm section. So it's playing that role. Even if you have very few drum fill ideas that you've got, or you chop or chops or things like that, if it feels good, that's the main thing.
Oh,
Kind of
absolutely.
thing. So, I like chopped drummers and stuff like that, and I work and continue to work in my rudiments and stuff like that to this day. But you don't always get a chance to play everything that you know. Sometimes it's like, don't do that. Don't do that.
Got to hold back, right?
Yeah. And also, sometimes the music can get a little chaotic because everybody's got something to say, and to just let them to speak, and you just support, kind of thing.
Sure.
Might be the thing that the music needs, kind of thing.
Yeah, those are all integral things. Those are key things, and definitely as someone that's a multi-instrumentalist, if I'm playing the bass, those are some qualities obviously I would want in a drummer, and vice versa. If I was on the drums, I'd probably want to hone those, and going the other direction. Yeah. What projects are you working on right now? Anything in particular?
Right now, I really don't have any projects. I have been. It's like I gotta have a project. And so right now, currently, I don't have any projects. I would say the project that I'm working on right now is my girlfriend's a singer, and trying to help her put her thing together, and so doing some studio stuff with her and her music, and putting guys together.
Okay.
I know good players, and so that's kind of what I have to offer, is I can put good guys together, good players together.
Okay, all right. And for those of us that may not be familiar with Girlfriend, I am. I had the pleasure of working with her on one particular project, and she's an amazing singer. Definitely on the launching pad. Are you comfortable sharing who your girlfriend is?
Oh yeah, Ellen Cusack is her name.
Okay, gotcha.
Ellen Gregg Cusack. She was classically trained, went to school, got out of performing for some years, and she's got a professional career. She's an ASL interpreter, teaches in the school district, and so, I've had jobs where it's like trying to gig at night, work all day, gig at night. It's hard to do. It's like you have to have the energy to pursue what you really are about, is your music, while trying to maintain that job and come up with that extra energy to get out and play and hustle and hunt down the gig, and and all that stuff that it requires.
It's a lot that goes into it, right?
Yeah, and
especially nowadays.
She's finding that she's like, I'm exhausted, and just trying to motivate her to. It was going to take something extra to make that happen for yourself. So
Yeah.
we're trying to work that out.
Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to hearing more of that project. And on the subject of projects in general, um, what what do you think of Richard Seller's latest project?
You know, I haven't heard Richard's latest project, so I can't comment. But Richard, being a dear friend of mine, um, know his kids, know his wife. Um, we've hung out. Actually, he's mixed two, maybe three of my CDs.
Mm-hmm.
So we've gotten very close over the years, you know, and working together and stuff
Sure.
like that. Great drummer, good sensibilities, got chops, great cat. He's got a working professional attitude about what he does.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, he has definitely got the left and the right brain thing
Yeah.
going, and that's cool. That there's other drummers that are way like Dave Weckl,
Mm-hmm.
has his production side. So that's a good skill set, but it's not for everyone. You know what I mean? It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
That is good. Well, let me ask you this: what do you think of this generation of music? What would you say?
So I mean, so that covers a lot of music. You know, there's hip hop and what they're doing and stuff like that.
Let's start there. What do you
Okay.
think of hip hop today
You know,
compared to hip hop of the '90s or '80s, or just hip hop that genre in general? What would you say?
Well, being a drummer, it attracts me to hip hop
Okay.
because it's rhythm centric, you know, kind of thing.
For sure.
I was a stepdad, so everything that I know about hip hop, I got started by my stepson. Listening to music that he's really into hip hop, and I think I have.
Is he a drummer as well?
He started on drums. He's in the army.
Okay.
Doesn't want to be a musician.
Okay.
He tried it, but he's he
Okay.
was a promoter in college, and so he's still got the musical thing going. It's just not as a musician, not as a player, kind of thing. I like hip hop. I like the rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
There's not as much harmony involved in it because it's not much harmony in it.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
kind of thing is kind of lacking. So,
But isn't it ironic though that it is the #1 music?
It is.
And in spite of it sort of being lacking production-wise, I recall like years ago I had submitted, for a brief period, I had an association with Capitol Records, and one of the A&R executives at the time, his name is Daryl Williams. I don't think he's there anymore. I think he left there and went to Elektra, working with maybe working with Sylvia Rohn or something. But he had commented about some of the production, that it was great production values because it wasn't all sampled, and at this time sampling was a big thing. So you mentioned simplicity, and so would you agree that it's just ironic of how far that genre has come in spite of its simplicity?
And I think people can relate to it. I mean, it's groove, and I mean, people are attracted to the simplicity of just groove. It could be bass and drums.
Yeah.
Whatever, and no solos, improvisation over the top. So the solo is the rap, kind of thing that they put over the top of it. So yeah, hip hop's cool with me. Some of it.
Sure.
Not all of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What would be in particular? What would you highlight, or what artist would you highlight that you would say is you're cool with?
I like Snoop Dogg.
Okay.
You gotta love Snoop Dogg. He makes good records, good quality records. I like Dre, Dr. Dre.
What do you think of the Super Bowl thing that they just did?
I liked it. I was like, it's about time, kind of thing for hip hop. And they're making a lot of money.
Sure.
I would like to see artists, musicians, hip hop musicians. They're making a lot of bank. Actors and actresses, and I'm talking about black actors and black musicians. I'd listen to the blues when I was growing up, and I loved the blues.
Okay.
And because the promoters, the record execs, they're all white. They
You're
market the
talking about
music
that
to-
particular genre or
I'm
in general?
Yeah, I'm talking about in general.
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
talking about it in general,
Yeah.
and definitely that too. You
Yeah.
know, where they would use their money to just we're in Black History Month, you know,
We
kind
are.
of thing, and I think that with critical race theory and that whole thing going on, that
What do you think of
it's
that?
up to
What do you
us
think of
to
critical?
tell our own story.
Sure.
And I
How do you think
people
that
are doing it.
ties into music? The critical race theory.
There's a lot of kids, especially, I'd say people could even be under 40 that don't know their history because they weren't ever taught their history, given their history.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is because, you know, it's who's telling your history. In Mali, they had the griot,
Mm-hmm.
and the griot knew the history of his village or his
Yeah.
tribe, and that was his job. He carried the history, and people were always reminded of their history. He knew who you were, who your family was, that kind of thing. So tied you to your history that made you feel like you belong, like you can see yourself,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing.
It's interesting, you know, to look at the idea of history, culture, and race, and how it all ties in. And you know, we definitely agree that there was a strong influx financially of, you know, certain ethnic groups sort of investing into the music, and that's an important thing. In other words, there are examples that have been very successful with that sort of marriage, if you will, but historically and ethnically, a lot of people wonder about you personally. What is your background ethnically?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I just did my DNA thing with 23andMe, so
Super cool.
so from what I've read from my results, I'm 58% West African
Okay,
and
nice.
Nigeria.
That's where the
Ghana.
drums come in, right?
The drums coming, I guess. You know, there's a lot of drums.
Yeah,
going on
yeah.
there. And then 38% Western European,
Okay.
French and German,
Mm-hmm.
and it traces some other aspects. So I have a paternal lineage with Ramses III, who's Pharaoh
Oh, wow.
Ramses the Third.
That's heavy.
In Egypt,
That is heavy.
kind of thing. Which was like, wow, if you believe in science and this thing's like, well, I don't know about this stuff. You know, it's like, well, these guys do it scientifically, and so that was the result. It's like, well, whether that impacts my life or not, I don't know. You know, there it is.
Wow, that's heavy. Ramses. You know, a lot of people probably thought you had a Native American background.
Mm.
So that's not the case then.
0.1%.
Okay.
Yeah. So the DNA thing says. So I thought I had my grandmother, my mom's mom, was Native American Indian.
Okay.
Because she was very light skinned with dark hair, and she had Indian features. Not until maybe in the last 5 years did I find out that she was Irish. She was full-blooded Irish.
Okay. Awesome. How has the pandemic affected you personally? I mean, here we are, 2022. How has the pandemic affected you personally? In other words, we may or may not be coming out of it because it seems like every other day the information changes. And we have to sort of understand the process. This is not something that's happened in 100 years. But how has it affected you personally, your business, your brand?
Definitely
and so forth?
affected in my business and everybody else's. You know, we talk about that. There's guys that you haven't seen in a while. I mean, we've seen each other through the whole
Yes.
pandemic thing here and
Yes.
there. We actually did some projects and stuff like that,
For
some
sure.
gigs.
Sure, we did.
But definitely not as much as we were doing before that.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So it definitely affected the work thing, and still, I hear from everybody it's still the same, but it seems like things are picking up. Tours are happening again. Guys are out there touring again. So, it could change in a second kind of thing with this whole pandemic thing, and it's kind of waning, but it could come right back strong. So just living life every day, and that makes the difference is what you're doing today, kind of thing.
Yeah,
And still involved in playing, and it gives you that appreciation for, man, I haven't been doing this in a while, and getting a chance to play again, and playing with the cats that you want to play with and you haven't seen in a while, and it really gives you an appreciation for being able to do that because you missed it, for so much.
sure.
I got the COVID over Christmas, as you know,
Yeah, yeah.
put me down. Actually, I wasn't that sick. It was like mild flu, but I had to isolate. I had to
Hmm.
isolate for 2 weeks.
And
So
that's a responsible thing to do.
yeah,
Sometimes
absolutely.
people don't do that. Just keep
No,
pushing. No, I don't know about that. But
I don't know
that's
about that
responsible.
either.
That's
Yeah,
responsible. Yeah.
and I think it is responsible to do that because you're thinking about your community and not just about yourself.
That I wish more of us would think that way.
Yeah,
But you're a great example of that. And in time, maybe more people will pay it forward and prevent someone from being in a situation like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So you talked a little bit about gigs and some of the things that you've done. The downturn of the pandemic in general and what we're going through. But professionally, gig wise, we have, just like being in any office or any professional situation, we have good days and bad days. Can you tell me a little bit about some situations or gigs, if you will, that just really did not work, or just what's the worst gig you ever had? Tell me about that.
Well, the most memorable gig that didn't work
Uh
out
oh.
was after playing with José Feliciano was my touring gig. I saw the world with Jose, and I auditioned for this French singer, Michel Jonas, and he's kind of like the Barry Manilow of France.
Okay.
And the money was really good, and auditioned for the gig. Um, he auditioned 100 drummers, and I got the call. I got the gig. So I got a call, and it was like, got some good news and got some bad news. It's like, well, give me the bad news. It was like, you're going to have to quit your gig. And I'm like, yeah, and it's like, and the good news is that you got the gig.
Okay.
So I was excited about that. Told Jose that it was hard to do. Jose didn't take it very well. We become like family and stuff like that. So, but it was an opportunity for me, and so I took the opportunity. Well, the musical director, we didn't hit it off.
All right. What happened?
And because his buddy that was auditioned for the gig, he wanted his buddy to get the gig, and I got selected for the gig. So he made my life miserable,
Oh.
and through the whole thing. So I went to France, and I was doing the gig, and we just did not hit it off. Being that he was a musical director, he just tried to make my life miserable to the point where it was like, you know what?
That's
I don't
insane.
care
Why would someone
how
do that?
much the gig is paying, and it was paying some good money. It's not worth it. It's not worth my happiness. Uh, so that was probably, and that was hard. So now I got no gig, after that.
And you're stuck in Europe or what?
I flew back home and just plugged back in. I was living in LA and plugged back into playing locally,
Hmm.
kind of thing. I wasn't going to stop playing, and I had known enough people where I could get a gig,
Right.
kind of thing. It was that good gig, kind of thing that I had to give up. And giving up my gig with Jose, which was, I could have retired, playing with Jose
Hmm.
up or until he did. I took a chance, and it didn't work out, and so it was like, so on, keep on stepping, kind of thing. But that was definitely hard, for
Right.
me.
Would you say that it is more or less of a network when you are in those, sort of situations. In other words, I just had a friend that ran into Kenny G, and it's funny. A lot of people sort of scoff at that, because of his commercial success, and I don't know where that comes from, because I know I can listen to records where he was just killing it doing fusion with Jeff Lorber and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we know he's got the chops.
Right.
But you talk about retiring and career, and this friend of mine that ran into him. This was just a few days ago. He did a show in L.A. and he mentioned me to Kenny as possibly doing bass. He said, I know of him, etc. But I've been playing with the people I'm with. I've been working with for 40 years.
Yeah.
But if ever something opens up, I'll keep him in mind.
Right.
So definitely it is something. If it gets from a network standpoint, it would appear that you could retire from a bigger artist.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Some are fortunate to do. I mean, and every gig comes to an end at some point. You have to have that in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
No matter how good it is. If you step out of a situation and cats try to hang on to their gig for as long as they possibly can, if you're satisfied with it and they treat you well, kind of thing, you're not giving up that gig. A lot of cats are not. But to break into that, it's going to be hard to do because they've got loyalties and that they've formed and friendships and things like that. So to break into that is hard to do. It's hard to do in the studios. It's hard to do in cliques and things like that. LA's very cliquish, and to break into the studio thing, it's like something has to happen to be able for you to get that call to slip in there. And I worked with the guy Dale Fielder for some years in Los Angeles. He's a tenor player, songwriter in the jazz vein, and worked in his band for some years. And I stepped out for personal reasons. And then when I wanted to come back in, he had gotten somebody else that he'd developed relationships with and good working relationship. And he said, "Man, you stepped out." He said, "We'd love to have you, but we got so-and-so now."
Sure.
And I understood.
It happens.
It
happens. I've known of a lot of people in that situation. They go to do one gig and then get another. I had a conversation a few months ago with a wonderful bass player who's done a lot of stuff for a lot of people, Melvin Lee Davis, and we were talking about situations sort of similar, and he had mentioned that Shaka Khan, who he's done a lot of stuff with, had called him to do. This is sort of when the pandemic is sort of, I guess, trailing down a little bit. This, I would say, is before Omicron, right before Omicron kicked up again. So we know it goes up and down.
Yep.
But he mentioned Shaka just called him, "Hey, can you do X, Y, or Z?" And he said, "You know what? I'm sorry, I've got to play with Lee Ritenour.
Right.
We're going to Japan."
Yeah.
And so people can lose out, but I guess if you're in a certain area of your clique, so to speak, you're not really losing. It's just like, I'll see you on the next one, right?
Yeah. Some people, some artists, and it depends. Somebody said 85% of playing music is dealing with personalities, and the rest is hopefully about the music kind of thing. That is so true, and some band leaders that you work with, and you're a band leader, that they're selfish, they're egotistical.
Many of them can be.
They take offense on a dime, So you kind of you're walking on.
Hopefully, I'm not in that category.
You're definitely not. You're one of the coolest cats I've ever worked with.
That. Thank you.
And I mean that from my heart. And it makes a difference, that you work with.
I think so. If I'm doing somebody else's, trying to assist someone else, attitude is everything, right?
Yeah.
Well, Russell, what would you say to, sort of in closing, what would you say to someone who wanted to follow in your footsteps, per se, and let's say not necessarily someone young, because we know that I run into people all the time
Mhm.
that either at one of my shows or just wherever. I always like we were talking about early on we were talking about drums, and I have sort of an association with certain brands,
Mhm.
but just for my studio collection, I purchased a Gretsch kit like just a few hours ago.
Okay.
Um, Beautiful kit in the bebop configuration, but I love the yellow color of it. It's pretty hot.
Like
But
Tony Williams.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly similar. But let me ask you this though: what would you say to someone who's getting in the game late, as opposed to a young person, or just any person in general wanting to get into it, wanting to play, and they feel like, you know, I wanted to do this, but I couldn't. What would you say to that person?
Well, number one, it has to be about knowing your instrument and being serious about your instrument,
Okay.
first and foremost. Then you have to have a professional attitude. You get to answer your phone. All those things. There's a lot of young guys, I'll say, they don't answer their phone. Now, back in the day, uh, I was of the generation where if you don't answer the phone, somebody else is going to answer the phone.
Absolutely.
You're going to lose that gig, kind of thing. Answer the phone. Be professional. Be flexible. Be willing to step outside your comfort zone and play the music that you're hired to play in the way that they want you to play it, within reason, and uh, just be professional. That's it.
Gotcha. Well, listen, Russell, we appreciate you coming out today to do this, and hey, we'll see you on the scene.
All right then.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.